Just stick to your ledgers, Olivia. My father always told me. Leave the big picture to us. I'm glad I listened. Because while they were focused on the big picture, I was focused on their second ledger, the one that sent them all to prison. My name is Olivia Hayes. I'm a forensic accountant. And last night, I sat in a black SUV parked a block away from my childhood home and watched a live news feed of the FBI raiding my family's annual charity gala. On the laptop screen propped on the dashboard, the scene was pure chaos. Crystal champagne flutes lay shattered on the marble floors. Miami's most influential philanthropists were frozen in shock. The news helicopter's camera zoomed in, capturing the moment my parents, Robert and Helen, the beloved pillars of the community, were let out in handcuffs, their faces masks of disbelief. Then came my sister, Chloe, the beautiful, charming public face of their fraudulent empire, her designer dress shimmering under the flashing red and blue lights. My sister once slapped me in public because she thought I was just a boring, invisible bean counter. She had no idea that a good accountant always knows where the money is hidden. And tonight, I came to collect. This is a different kind of family revenge story, one that plays out not in explosive arguments, but in the silent, unforgiving numbers of a secret ledger. It's about a family that built a kingdom on lies, and the quiet daughter they never saw coming who was about to burn it all to the ground with the simple, brutal truth. Have you ever been the quiet one in your family, the one who everyone ignores, but who sees and hears everything? If you know what it's like to be the observer in the background, just type the city you're watching from in the comments. I want to see where all the quiet watchers are tonight. To understand how it all ended here, with FBI agents carrying evidence boxes out of my home, you first have to understand the beautiful, perfect lie we lived for 20 years. On the surface, my family was a Miami fairy tale. We were the Hayes family, and our New Horizons Foundation was the darling of the city's philanthropic scene. My parents, Robert and Helen, were revered for their generosity. My older sister, Chloe, was the star. With her model-like looks and effortless charm, she was the public face of our charity, gracing the covers of local society magazines and giving eloquent, often tearful, speeches at galas that raised millions of dollars. She was the beautiful, charismatic savior of the city's underprivileged. And I was the ghost. I worked out of a small, windowless office in the back of our sprawling waterfront home. My world was spreadsheets, invoices, and bank statements. I was the one who processed the donations, managed the payroll, and reconciled the accounts. I was the quiet, diligent worker bee, the numbers girl, while Chloe was the queen. It was a role they had assigned to me from childhood. She was the face, I was the hands, and for years, I had quietly accepted it. But as my forensic accounting degree sharpened my eye for detail, I started to see things in the numbers that didn't add up. An invoice for a $5,000 designer gown, listed under gala event supplies. The lease payments for Chloe's new Porsche, filed under community outreach transportation. When I would question my father, he would just smile that condescending smile of his. Olivia, darling, you don't understand the cost of doing good. You have to spend money to make money. Just stick to your ledgers. He wanted me to see the numbers, but he never wanted me to read the story they were telling. And the story was a lie. Every family has roles, don't they? The pretty one, the smart one, the responsible one. Have you ever felt like you were cast in a part you didn't choose? Let me know in the comments. Were you the star of your family or the worker bee? I'm curious to see the balance in our community. I was the worker bee, and I was beginning to realize the entire hive was rotten to the core. The breaking point arrived, as it so often does, in the most public of settings. It was at our annual Power of Giving luncheon at the Fontainebleau Hotel, an event where my sister would shine. The ballroom was a sea of pastel linen suits and old money. Just before the presentations began, I received an email on my phone. I had passed the final part of the CPA exam. After 3 years of working all day and studying all night, I was officially a certified public accountant. It was the proudest moment of my professional life. Glowing, I quietly showed the email to my mother, hoping for just a flicker of acknowledgement. But Chloe, who can sense a shift in the spotlight from 100 yards away, immediately glided over to our table. "What's all the excitement about?" she asked, plucking the phone from my hand before I could answer. She scanned the email. Oh, a little accounting test. How adorable. She turned to the wealthy couple seated with us, major donors to our foundation. My sister is just so dedicated to her little spreadsheets. We're all so proud of her hobby. The condescension in her voice was a physical thing, thick and suffocating. My face burned with humiliation. It's a professional certification, Chloe. I said quietly. It means a lot to me. Of course it does, sweetie. She replied, patting my cheek in a gesture of pure dominance. Mortified, I stood up. Please excuse me. As I turned to walk away, she grabbed my arm, her manicured nails digging into my skin. You will not embarrass me in front of our guests, she hissed, her dazzling smile gone, replaced by a cold fury. You're embarrassing yourself, I whispered back, trying to pull my arm free. That's when her hand swung. It wasn't a dramatic, movie-style wind-up. It was a short, sharp, vicious slap that cracked in the air. Time seemed to stop. A few people at the nearby tables turned to stare. Chloe just leaned in close, her eyes like ice. Know your role, she whispered, before turning back to the donors with a brilliant, apologetic smile, leaving me standing there, my cheek on fire with a humiliation so absolute it stole my breath. I fled the ballroom, my cheek throbbing, and found refuge on a deserted terrace overlooking the ocean. I was trying to choke back tears of pure rage and humiliation when a calm, measured voice spoke from behind me. That was a disgusting display. I trust you're all right. I turned to see a man in his late 30s, impeccably dressed in a dark suit, his eyes sharp and analytical. He wasn't offering pity, he was making an observation. Before I could respond, he extended a hand. My name is Julian Croft. The name didn't mean anything to me. I was one of the first major donors to the New Horizons Foundation about 10 years ago, he continued, his voice low and intense. Your father and sister charmed me out of $500,000 for a community housing project in Little Havana that was never built. The money and my subsequent inquiries simply vanished. My blood ran cold. This man wasn't just a random guest. He was a victim. I've spent the better part of a decade trying to find a crack in their armor, he said, his gaze unwavering. But their books are a fortress. I always suspected they had a skilled accountant on the inside, cleaning up their tracks. For a long time, I thought that accountant might be you. He gestured back toward the ballroom. But what I just saw in there, that wasn't an accomplice. That was a prisoner. That slap wasn't just an insult. It was a message. And it told me everything I need to know. He looked me directly in the eye, and in that moment, the world seemed to shift on its axis. I have the resources, the legal team, and the motive to burn their entire fraudulent empire to the ground. But I need someone on the inside. I need the person who knows the numbers. I need you, Olivia. Have you ever had a moment where a complete stranger saw your worth more clearly than your own family ever did? If you've ever had an unexpected ally appear right when you needed them most, just type the word Ollie in the comments. Let's celebrate those life-changing encounters. He wasn't just offering me a way out. He was offering me a weapon. He was offering me revenge. Julian Croft's offer hung in the humid Miami air between us. Revenge. It was a word I'd only ever read in books, a concept that felt alien and terrifying. My first instinct, the instinct of a daughter who had spent her entire life trying to keep the peace, was to refuse, to run. This was my family, my blood. As cruel and dysfunctional as they were, the idea of actively plotting their downfall felt like a monstrous betrayal, a line I could never uncross. I thought of my mother, my father, the sister who, in some distant childhood memory, I had actually loved. Could I be the one to send them to prison? The ingrained loyalty of a lifetime, however one-sided, is a powerful and heavy chain. But then, the phantom sting of my sister's hand on my cheek flared up again. I thought of all the years I had been the good daughter, the quiet one, the one who balanced the books and never made a fuss. I thought of the condescending smiles, the dismissive pats on the head, and the constant, soul-crushing weight of being invisible. They had never treated me like family. They had treated me like a compliant, unpaid employee whose only job was to make them look good. And worse, I thought of the foundation's name, New Horizons. And of all the real new horizons they had stolen from people like Julian, people they were supposed to be helping. This was bigger than my hurt feelings. This was about a lifetime of lies. This was about justice. I looked at Julian, this stranger who had shown me more respect in 5 minutes than my own family had in 27 years. The fear was still there, a cold knot in my stomach. But for the first time in a long time, I felt a flicker of power beneath it. My power. The choice was suddenly clear. It wasn't a choice between loyalty and betrayal. It was a choice between remaining their victim or finally becoming their consequence. Okay, I said, my voice barely above a whisper, but it was the steadiest it had been all day. I'll do it. Tell me what you need. The next day, I walked back into my family home and did the most difficult, most duplicitous thing I have ever done. I apologized. With my head bowed, I told my father and sister I was sorry for making a scene and that my behavior was inappropriate. It was exactly what their egos needed to hear. They were smug, condescending, and utterly convinced they had put me back in my place. They welcomed their quiet little accountant back into the fold, never for a second suspecting that I had just become a Trojan horse, sent to burn their city to the ground from the inside. My life split into two. By day, I was the same invisible Olivia, processing invoices, balancing spreadsheets, and enduring Chloe's casual cruelty. But by night, after they had all gone to bed, I became Julian Croft's secret agent. My heart pounded in my chest every time I crept into my father's home office, telling myself I just needed to print a document. In reality, I was using a small, encrypted flash drive Julian had given me to systematically copy years of financial records. I took pictures of contracts with an app that instantly uploaded them to a secure server. Every inflated invoice, every suspicious wire transfer to a shell corporation in the Cayman Islands, I funneled it all to Julian's team. It was the most terrifying period of my life. Every creak of the floorboards, every unexpected late-night return from my parents, sent a jolt of pure ice through my veins. The deeper I dug, the more disgusted I became. The fraud wasn't just a few padded expense reports. It was a vast, sprawling criminal enterprise dressed up as a charity. I was betraying my family, yes, but I was betraying a family of predators. And with every piece of damning evidence I uncovered, my resolve hardened from a fragile hope into unbreakable steel. I knew the smoking gun, the one piece of evidence that could connect all the dots, had to be somewhere in that house. I just had to find it before they found me out. After 2 months of my covert operation, I had collected a mountain of digital evidence for Julian's suspicious wire transfers, inflated invoices, emails with cryptic instructions. His legal team was impressed, but they warned me it was all circumstantial. A clever defense attorney could still create reasonable doubt. I knew, with the gut certainty of a forensic accountant, that my family was too arrogant to not keep a hard record. The official books were too clean, too perfect. There had to be a second ledger. I knew it wouldn't be in my father's office. That was too obvious. It had to be somewhere sentimental, somewhere he felt untouchable. The answer was his private study, right behind the grand oil portrait of his mother, my grandmother, the only truly honest person in our family line. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. One night, while they were all out at yet another gala, I slipped into the study. My hands shaking, I lifted the heavy portrait off the wall. And there it was, a small, flush-mounted wall safe. The combination was my grandmother's birthday. The heavy steel door swung open. Inside, there was no cash, no jewelry, just one simple, unassuming, leather-bound accounting ledger. I took it back to my room and opened it. My blood ran cold. It was all there, documented in my father's neat, meticulous handwriting. Every fraudulent donation, every kickback, every dollar laundered through their charitable work. Each entry was a crime, but the one that made me stop breathing was a line item for a $200,000 grant to a shell corporation. In the margin, my father had written a small note. Final down payment, Chloe's South Beach condo. Have you ever had that heart-pounding moment when you finally find the one piece of evidence that proves you weren't crazy, that your gut feeling was right all along? If you've ever had that incredible I can't it moment, just type evidence in the comments. A nod to all the truth seekers out there. This wasn't just a smoking gun. This was a handwritten confession to a decade of lies. I photographed every single page of that secret ledger and sent the encrypted files to Julian. His legal team confirmed it was the smoking gun, a direct record of a decade of criminal activity. But they proposed a final, devastating move. A history of fraud is one thing. Their lead counsel told us over a secure video call. Catching them in the act of committing a new crime in the present day is another. It makes the case airtight and the verdict inescapable. It was time to stop digging into the past and start setting a trap for their future. The plan was brilliant, and it preyed on their greatest weakness: greed. Julian, using a carefully constructed identity as Mr. J.C. Blackwood, a reclusive European philanthropist, approached my family's foundation. He offered them the one thing he knew they could never resist: a $10 million unrestricted donation. The bait was on the hook. My family didn't just take it, they lunged at it. They were ecstatic, intoxicated by the thought of their biggest payday yet. My sister Chloe was assigned to be Mr. Blackwood's personal liaison, and she laid on the charm, completely oblivious that she was seducing the man she had helped defraud years ago. But Mr. Blackwood had one seemingly innocent condition. Before wiring the funds, he required a detailed, confidential proposal outlining exactly how the $10 million would be allocated, complete with draft contracts for all major vendors. This was the genius of the trap. It forced my family to create a brand new, meticulously detailed paper trail of their criminal intentions before they even touched the money. And my role in all of this? I was the one tasked with preparing the fraudulent financial projections and drafting the fake vendor contracts for their approval. I would sit in meetings, my face a mask of quiet diligence, as my father and sister dictated their plans to embezzle millions. Every night, I would send the day's work to Julian's team. I wasn't their accountant anymore. I was the architect of their downfall. With the new fraudulent documents created for Mr. Blackwood, Julian's team now had enough evidence to approach the authorities. The FBI's white-collar crime division was brought in. They had the historical crimes from the ledger and the active crime from the new proposal. But the prosecutor wanted something to make the case completely undeniable, something that would leave no room for a jury's doubt: a confession. They asked me to do the one thing I was most terrified of. They asked me to wear a wire. The morning of the final planning meeting for the Blackwood donation, a stern-faced FBI agent fitted me with a tiny recording device, hidden inside a simple silver locket. It felt as heavy as a tombstone against my skin. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I was sure they could hear it. One wrong move, one suspicious glance from my father, and the entire operation could be compromised. I walked into his home office, the smell of leather and lies thick in the air. They were all there: my father, my mother, and Chloe, gleefully mapping out how they would carve up the $10 million. Playing the part of the nervous accomplice, I started asking the questions the FBI had coached me on. "I'm just a little worried," I said, letting my voice tremble. "This new paper trail, are we sure it's completely untraceable, like the old system in the ledger?" My father laughed, a deep, arrogant sound. "Olivia, please. This is the exact same method we've used for 20 years. It's foolproof." My mother chimed in. "That money will be in our private accounts in the Caymans before the ink on the check is even dry." Then Chloe, smug and victorious. "And who's ever going to know? You're the only one who sees the books." They all laughed. A happy, criminal family, confessing to decades of conspiracy on a live federal wire. Have you ever had to do something that absolutely terrified you because you knew, deep in your soul, it was the right thing to do? If you've ever had to push through your fear to stand for what's right, just hit that like button. A salute to all the brave hearts out there. I excused myself from the room, my hands shaking uncontrollably, my mission complete. I had just recorded my family's final confession. The gala to welcome Mr. Blackwood was the most extravagant, most arrogant party my family had ever thrown. It was their masterpiece of deception. Hundreds of Miami's elite gathered at our waterfront mansion, sipping $1,000 a bottle champagne and celebrating the $10 million lie that Julian had fed them. From the dark interior of the SUV parked a block away, I watched it all unfold on a live news feed Julian had arranged with a local station, tipped off to a major philanthropic announcement. My sister Chloe was on a custom-built stage by the infinity pool, a vision in a glittering silver gown, giving a passionate speech about the transformative power of giving. My parents were the king and queen of the ball, mingling with politicians and billionaires, accepting praise for their incredible success. They were at the absolute peak of their power, radiant in their fraudulence. And then, precisely at 9 p.m., it happened. The live feed showed the ornate front gates of our mansion bursting open. A silent, deadly convoy of black SUVs streamed up the long driveway, their flashing blue and red lights painting the palm trees in chaotic strokes. FBI agents in tactical vests swarmed the perfectly manicured lawns. The string quartet's gentle music screeched to a halt. A federal agent with a bullhorn announced, "FBI, nobody move." The news camera zoomed in on my sister's face, her radiant smile collapsing into a mask of pure shock and terror. It panned to my father, his champagne glass slipping from his hand and shattering on the marble patio. I watched, my heart a cold, steady drum, as agents walked onto the stage and placed my sister in handcuffs. I watched as they read my father his rights. The entire, spectacular downfall of the Hayes family broadcast live for the world to see. In the quiet darkness of the SUV, Julian simply said, "It's done." The boring bean counter had finally balanced the books. The legal battle was swift and brutal. Faced with the irrefutable evidence of the secret ledger and their own voices confessing to decades of conspiracy on a federal wiretap, my family had no defense. To avoid a humiliating, drawn-out public trial, they all accepted plea bargains. My father, as the mastermind, was sentenced to 10 years in federal prison for wire fraud and money laundering. My mother, as his accomplice, received 5. And Chloe, my beautiful, charming sister, who thought the world was her personal piggy bank, traded her designer gowns for a prison uniform for the next 3 years. The Miami mansion, the South Beach condo, the luxury cars, all of it was seized. The Hayes name was unceremoniously scraped from the donor walls of every museum and hospital in Florida. Their empire was liquidated. Julian was true to his word. After the legal proceedings, once the foundation's seized assets were used to compensate the victims he could identify, he gave me a substantial reward for my courage and my work. It was enough money to start over, to disappear and live a life of quiet luxury anywhere in the world. And for a moment, I was tempted. But as I read the victim impact statements, the stories of small family businesses and elderly couples who had been scammed by my parents' false promises, I knew I couldn't just walk away. Last month, I used every dollar of that reward to file the paperwork for a new nonprofit. I called it the Ledger Foundation. Its mission is simple and direct: to provide free, pro bono forensic accounting services to people who believe they are being defrauded by charities or family members. I took the money born from a generation of lies and used it to build a house of unbreakable truth. I didn't want the life my sister had craved. I wanted to build the kind of new horizons my family had only ever pretended to care about. My work as a quiet avenger was over. My work as a builder was just beginning. My whole life, my family defined me by my role, the quiet accountant, the boring numbers girl in the back room. In the end, they were right about one thing. I am an accountant. And I believe, with every fiber of my being, that every ledger must eventually be balanced. For decades, my family's books were catastrophically unbalanced. Their greed was a massive liability, their cruelty a debt against the world, and their lies a currency they thought they could spend forever without consequence. But they forgot the first and most fundamental rule of my profession. Nothing goes unnoticed forever. Sooner or later, there is always an audit. This whole, devastating family revenge story was never about simple hatred or a sister's jealousy. It was about performing the final, necessary audit on my family's moral bankruptcy. It was about making the numbers add up. It was about ensuring that every stolen dollar was accounted for, and every single lie was paid for in full with the hard, cold currency of truth. The lesson at the end of this long, dark road is a simple one. You don't have to be the loudest person in the room to be the most powerful. Sometimes, it's the quiet ones, the ones who watch, who listen, who do the work, who hold the real ledger. If this story of quiet strength and ultimate accountability resonated with you, then this space is for you. Subscribe and join a community that believes truth is the ultimate asset. For my last question tonight, I want you to tell me in the comments, what is one area in your life where you are ready to finally balance the books? Let's fill this space with our resolve. Thank you for listening. Remember, in the end, everyone, and I mean everyone, answers to the auditor.